Welcome to the AI Queens podcast, the show where women entrepreneurs learn to ditch the overwhelm, embrace AI, and build businesses fit for royalty. I'm Erica Stanley, your host and tech expert, here to deliver tools, tips, and actionable strategies to help you scale smarter. Let's get to it. Hello, Queens, and welcome back. We are in season 2 of the AI Queens podcast. I took a little summer break to reset and recharge, but now I'm back and better than ever. I even created some amazing bonus content to keep you going while I was away. If you haven't checked out the Nano Banana mini episode yet, definitely go give that a listen. Season 2 is bringing you something totally new. For the first time ever, I'm bringing some guests into our royal court. And I'm kicking things off with someone absolutely brilliant. Today, I'm joined by Sandy Bean, a neurodivergent entrepreneur and belonging architect who helps ADHD and neurospicy minds build businesses that actually work for how their brains are wired. Instead of forcing yourself into systems that make you feel broken, Sandy shows you how to create ones that let your brilliance shine. If you've ever felt like traditional business systems just don't work for your beautiful, chaotic brain, or if you're constantly battling overwhelm, time blindness, or that voice that says you're too much, this episode is for you. We're talking about how AI can serve as your executive function assistant, help you stop masking in your business, and finally build an empire that celebrates how your mind actually works. Let's jump straight into the episode with Sandy Bean. Sandy, welcome to AI Queens.
I'm so glad to be here. I'm thrilled to talk about this with you. I could just geek out for days on this topic.
Awesome. I'm so glad you're here. So let's start with the biggest misconception about neurodivergent entrepreneurs and AI that you want to bust wide open for us today.
I think a big misconception is that AI is a shiny tool or shiny object that we should just be using the tools we have and trying harder to be able to function and not, going in this new direction and playing around and going down AI rabbit holes. I think neurospicy entrepreneurs as a rule have that reputation for, I think I'll start this thing and I think I'll start that thing, and putting our boat in circles, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
This is not one of those things. It is not simply another shiny object. These tools, there's so many different kinds. It's not just generative AI, right? And when we allow ourselves to do what neurodivergent brains often do best, which is get really into it, they can absolutely be, like you said, a game changer in so many different capacities. So I think that would be the big thing I want to debunk is it's not just another shiny object, another Band-Aid. It can actually make changes in how we process things and what we're able to do on a regular basis.
Oh, I absolutely love that. Thank you so much for breaking that down for us. So I want to jump in with a reality check for our listeners. So regarding neurodiversity, neurospicy brains, and we talk about the systems that were set up for businesses, for entrepreneurs. I think that you've mentioned before to me that the systems are broken. It's not our brains that are broken. It's the systems that are broken. For neurodivergent women trying to build businesses, how does this show up for us? Like, what are the things that we're fighting against?
I think it might make sense to just back up with a teeny little bit of context. When we talk about neurodiversity, right, that's just the whole spectrum of neurological function. And when we talk about neurodivergent, we're talking about anything that's outside of what would be considered like what's typical. And so neurotypical versus neurodiverse. And there's clinical neurodivergence, which is categorized as like things like ADHD, autism, dyslexia, Tourette syndrome, dyspraxia, all kinds of different stuff. But we can also, if we're talking about sort of the social aspect, a gifted brain is neurodivergent as well. A trauma adapted brain is neurodivergent as well, which is most women. So when we're talking about neurodivergence, we're talking about the difficulty functioning inside what would be considered neurotypical. So for most entrepreneurs that I work with, that I deal with, I see a lot of ADHD. It's postulated that up to 30% or more of entrepreneurs have ADHD, and most entrepreneurs also have a gifted brain, which means their IQ is up over 120, 128. So connections are made faster, more ideas kind of flying around, but it's not without expense. What happens when you have a super highway in one part of your mind, sometimes things fall out in other pieces, or the highway gets jammed and we have difficulty with other stuff. That usually falls into a few different categories. For folks with autism, that might be social stuff. For folks with ADHD, more often than not, it's executive function stuff. So things like task initiation, task completion, organization. There can be anxiety around a lot of things, rejection sensitivity. So it's interesting to think about all of the different ways that we are impacted just by having a brain like that. If we take that context and we say, okay, now what? Now, what do we do with that? What are the difficulties that we're running into, and how do we help ourselves? It's going to look different for everybody, right? So, for most women that I know, that starts with executive function, at least for me, especially for me. It starts with, how can I manage my calendar? How can I make sure I'm actually getting my goals done? And how can I make sure that I am taking the demands that are in my brain for all the other parts of my life and putting them over here? And I'm not going to forget them while I'm trying to pursue these goals, because entrepreneurship, as there's so many different hats that you wear, and we have a lot going on all at the same time. So it's like, we need a way to help catch that. We need extra baskets, and AI can help provide that for us.
I love that and I feel that. There's a different weight on my brain since I started my business than there was when I was working for someone else and I had a set system or set list of responsibilities. And when I would log off at the end of the day, I was just done. And entrepreneurship doesn't work like that.
No, and it's helpful to think about shifting gears at the end of the day and all of that. And like I said, AI tools can really help with that. It's, even if you do work for someone else though, and you just fall into these camps, it's important to remember that when you feel that weight on your brain, I love the way you said that, it's, we have to take a step back and actually put, well, what is really bothering me? Is it not, I'm not producing the work I need to? Am I just stressed out and I don't really know why? Because you have to do a little bit of troubleshooting if you want to be able to use the correct tool to be able to alleviate some of those things on yourself. And we can talk about that specifically when we get there, but there are some really interesting ways that you can use those tools to kind of break things down and help yourself. I use stuff all the time, and help yourself put a finger on where the breakdown is for you. I mean, even just with generative AI, you can just speak into ChatGPT and be like, here's the situation I just went through. This is what I've noticed in my body. Can you potentially do a little bit of research and tell me what exactly the emotion I probably am feeling is? Because sometimes you don't know. It's very, very helpful. And some people don't think about using the tools that way.
Oh, that's so interesting. I had not thought
Mm-hmm.
about using it to help name, like, what am I feeling right now? This is
Like,
this is
what
what's
is
going
going on?
on. And yes, I did use it last week. I was feeling really overwhelmed. I'd been traveling for like 3 weeks straight, living out of a suitcase. And I get back to my desk. I've got a lot of emails. Even though I had a great out of office set, I still had a lot of emails and I was feeling a little overwhelmed. And so I was talking into my phone, walking around the backyard. Like, here's everything, just getting everything out of my brain, stream of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Even without AI, this like process of doing that, of just brain dumping, felt so much better.
Oh, it's so cathartic.
And then
It's so cathartic.
and then I put it into Claude, had Claude help me organize based on priorities, timelines, what's urgent versus what's important. And then I asked Claude, like, hey, can you turn this into an app for me so that all of these are organized? And I was able to check them off in the little app. And I asked it, I was like, can you make it rain confetti every time I check something off?
I love it. Dopamine rush.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, for a little dopamine hit. And it was so cool that it helped me do all of that in less than 20 minutes, where I had been sitting paralyzed with indecision at my desk, procrastinating, doing things that I did not need to be doing. Like, oh, I think I'll do some research on Instagram and see. Like, no, girl, you've got so much stuff to do. And
If you're
within
avoiding something as a person with ADHD, you will build a whole house to not have to do that thing.
yes,
Like,
I
it's
built a
wild.
whole app, but then the app helped me. So it's I do want to jump into this actually. So for I want to get a little practical with this. For someone who is neurodivergent, who struggles with executive function, would you say, what are like the top 3 ways that AI can support them and their business?
I think one of the things that folks with ADHD and autism and a lot of these neurodivergent folks struggle with is prioritization. That's huge.
Yep.
Even if we know what important and urgent mean, there's this sense of now and not now, or, well, this window's open, so I guess I'll do that. So to create priorities, I think is number one. To be able to realistically estimate how much time something is going to take is also very helpful. I really
Ah,
struggle with time blindness.
yes.
So if I'm like, this will take me 15 minutes, and ChatGPT is like, that'll take you about 90 minutes, I have to sort of figure out, is that accurate? Like sometimes it's wrong because this is my area of expertise and I know I can knock it out. And sometimes I'm just being ridiculously optimistic when there's no possible way. So helping me estimate timelines and price packages accordingly is very helpful in terms of that stuff.
I
I really go ahead.
so I want to stop you there because
Yeah.
I think that this is it's something that I struggle with and something that I know clients I've worked with also struggle with is the time
Mhm.
blindness, but also the feeling of failure when you have a to-do list that you have set up for yourself for the day and you only get through the top half of that. I think time estimation and realize like looking at that list, having it in AI and you realizing, oh, this is going to take me 27 hours. I only have 8 or 9 hours to get work done today. Like, this is an unrealistic expectation I've put on myself. And it helps me to feel better about what I'm accomplishing, knowing that, oh, when I sat down to look at all the things that I have to do today, it's unrealistic for me to expect to get all of this done.
Exactly, exactly. It oftentimes I'll have it because I have a prompt just in my notes that I copy and paste whenever I brain dump. I really like it. I learned from a business mentor of mine, Angela Devlin, pick three things weekly for this whole week, and then what fits under that, and try not to go beyond three things a day that I'm going to prioritize. If I get through them, awesome. I can look at what else I've got. I don't usually get through them
Yeah.
all, but it helps. And if I know I only have this many hours, but I have to at least have a touch point with these four clients or whatever, I can put that in there and say, okay, what are a few things that I can do to at least get on the same page with these or check in to make sure that this is being maintained, and it'll help me do all those things. So one of the things that I struggle with is getting started, task initiation. And so what I will do is I'll take, so our brains a lot of times see a project, but we don't always see individual tasks beneath that project. Kind of like if I say, well, I'm going to clean my house today, that means a lot of things. What exactly do you mean? You have to break it down to like brass tacks. So if I, for example, need to create, I don't know, let's say I'm creating a visibility strategy for a client. I may then say, all right, I need to create a visibility strategy. That's huge. And now I'm like, okay, but I ask for granular detail on what that looks like. Given I give them like an outcome that I've already made and say, okay, granular detail, I'm moving from here to here, very small. I read through the list and I say, which one of those feels the yuckiest, which is going to be hard for me, whether it's time, whether I'm not sure how to approach it, whatever it is. I take that thing, I move it, I plug it in to AI or whatever, a different window, and I say, how can I automate this or make it easier? And it'll give me ideas. And once I smooth through the bump, a lot of times that helps me start the task initiation process and I have no problem finishing it. So it's helpful to even go so far as after I've prioritized, then taking the big priority, breaking that down into granular pieces and figuring out where the hang up is something else that's helpful. It's allowed me to become, if it's possible, more metacognitive, but not in an anxious kind of way. More metacognitive, but not in an anxious, like, I have to think about this, but a more like a, okay, where's the breakdown for me? And there's no judgment. There's nobody telling me, get your act together. It's literally like a tool saying, oh, you think this part's going to be hard. Here's ways you can get around that. So I would say that it's prioritization, it's time blindness, time management, and then task initiation for me. And those are the big three that I see from a lot of others too.
Wow. Okay. No, I
Mhm.
love all of those. Okay. So you mentioned the perfectionism, and I am thinking about my queens who have that perfectionism paralysis.
Mhm.
What are some other practical ways that you have found to push through that using AI?
Mm, that's a great question. I love Goblin.tools, which is, you can use any AI tool for it, but that breaking things down into granular steps. And sometimes I have to say, give me granular steps that will take me no more than 5 minutes or no more than whatever, because then I can use the trick on myself. Like, I'll just do this for 5 minutes. And I find that that helps get me over the hurdle. It's also helpful. You have to be careful because a lot of times you can train your tools to be echo chambers and they'll just be like, this is great when it's trash. So if you can train and have a great prompt, which, the AI can also help create the prompt, you can put in something you're working on that you think is absolute dribble, and it will give you feedback on, actually, this is not dribble. You
Yes.
can absolutely give this to someone, because we get in our own heads and we don't always understand our own brilliance because we are ourselves. So having realistic feedback, how far am I in this process, and having another source to sort of iterate with is very, very helpful. And also just being able to get reminders. Like, sometimes my perfectionism comes from, oh my gosh, I'm going to run out of time or whatever. So if I can manage that by having reminders and time blocks, that's really helpful. Because for me, this goes back to the time blindness thing. The perfectionism can sometimes rise up in me because I feel like there's so much to do and I need to do it all right now. And what am I going to do? And even though I don't intend to get frozen, I do. So what is really helpful for me is when I'm setting up my week, I already have time blocks that exist. But if you don't have it, you can start from scratch and you can say, break these into categories. I have 30 hours this week. Where makes logical sense, so I'm not swapping between maker and manager tasks when I need a deep focus set, whatever. It'll give you an ideal week. And what happens is, if I know that I'm only supposed to be creating Canva graphics from 9 to 11 on Wednesday, I'm not thinking about the other 57 things I need to do when I'm in that block, because I know I'll get to them. It alleviates some of that guilt if you're not doing other things.
Ah.
It really, really helps. So having it block that out, so I know that I will get to it because I've devoted that time, but it allows me to be present, and I'm so much more productive that way, because I don't have any spoons being taken away from all the other thoughts that are roaming around in my brain. So that really helps, because if I can stay calm and focused, it helps me be able to manage that perfectionism on a more realistic level.
Oh, it's helping to clear up the clouds in your brain because you know that it's already going to be handled later on in the week.
Exactly.
Oh,
Exactly,
love
exactly.
that.
And it's amazing, isn't it? It's really, essentially, we get to outsource some of our, like, frontal lobe, right? Some of our working memory, where we're like, I don't need to think about this now. I'm going to put that over here. And you can, because you have a list, you have your prompt, this is your block, and that's it. So it really, really helps. It helps a ton.
And what tool are you using for this? Are you in ChatGPT? Are you in Claude? Like,
Claude, it depends on the task. Personally love Claude for feedback on things that are creative. If I want to play with the nuance of phrasing or something like that, I think it does better with tasks for me that are linguistic. I also prefer it for coding and stuff. If I need something that's a little bit more sort of a scientific analytical breakdown, I like ChatGPT. Goblin.tools is an app, or you can use the website, that's specifically designed to break things into granular pieces. You, like, drag the little slider bar to how many chili peppers for how neurospicy you're feeling that day, and you click it. It's so cute. And it will break down from there into subtasks and everything. I find that one kind of fun because it's like gamified a little bit. So I would say those three are the big ones that I use. And then I do a lot of automations with my inbox, with my calendar, just things like that, that just to off source, like, so I don't have to think about stuff,
yeah.
if people book with me and things like that. So, but for these kinds of things I'm talking about, I tend to use generative AI. And it just depends. I would say my main go-to, though, is probably Claude.
All right. So now I want to flip this a little bit. You mentioned
Mm-hmm.
that there's probably about 30% of entrepreneurs who are on the neurospicy spectrum a little bit.
Oh, just ADHD. There's
Oh,
probably more.
just ADHD. Okay. That means that many of us are having to work with and communicate with neurotypical brains on the regular.
Oh, yes.
How are you seeing, either yourself or through the clients you work with, how are you seeing these neurodivergent brains using AI to alleviate some of the friction that we've all dealt with all of our lives, right? The friction that we feel neurodivergent brains talking to neurotypical brains.
Mm. So I'll go into two specific qualities and cases. One is, so I had a client who, she has dyslexia and is brilliant, but really struggles with her own self doubt in expressing her ideas clearly because of her disability. So if you're not familiar with dyslexia in terms of how it impacts even adults, right? There's just difficulty in reading and writing expression, verbal expression too. And so but dyslexic brains are amazing at 3D imagining like all sides of a problem, just very powerful problem solvers and can really look at layers of things. But it's frustrating because there's often this disconnect in I can see it, but to get it out there, I know it's not going to be necessarily spelled correctly. I might speak about it in a circular way, and that's going to frustrate everyone, and I'll just shut down. In the right conditions, that doesn't happen. But when you're dealing with someone neurotypical that you've never worked with before, you don't have time necessarily to build those conditions in that rapport. So for people like that, they can dump all of their thoughts into a generative AI tool, ask it to organize it, spell check, all of those things, and very easily then have something that they can put into a browser with their dyslexia font, read it themselves, make sure it sounds good, and then send it off. So for her, it was like she finally had like the secret decoder ring to take what she knew was here and be able to articulate it without that cycle of self-doubt that happens to so many of us. So that is really, really powerful, I think, for people that have any kind of articulation concern. And I think the other thing, and this I just did, I'm doing an article in Forbes about this, but rejection sensitivity is huge. So up to 99 or something ridiculous percent of folks with ADHD deal with rejection sensitivity. And it just means that any rejection, whether it's real, perceived, we do it to ourselves, someone else does it to us, is painful. It physically is painful. It's mentally and emotionally draining. We just feel it so deeply. And so when we're taking risks, when we're getting feedback that is critical, it's really hard for us to get past it, process it in a way that's helpful. So what happens is we either can kowtow and send back a reply that's like anything you want, whatever, even if we're not in the wrong, or we may get a heavily critical document or feedback that we just don't have the bandwidth to process in a way that's not going to be triggering. This is really useful. You slap that into a generative AI tool and you ask for a summary of the main points without the emotional language so you can process and address it. Or you can take whatever your reply is and say, these are the things I'm dealing with. This is the situation. Here's the contract. Am I right in what I'm thinking? How do I articulate it in such a way that I'm not overgiving or however you would like to phrase it? But it allows you to take the objective points and helps remove some of the triggering rejection sensitive tendencies from that kind of situation so you can process it in a level that feels a little bit more accessible to you. I find that once I've done that and then I take 24 hours, because always, I can actually read the source document, even if it was very critical. And I don't feel it's much easier for me to be able to handle it because I already have like the gist. So, and sometimes I never read it because it doesn't matter. So, because I know what I'm trying to address. So that can be very helpful too, is asking those tools to help you screen it through something that from a rejection sensitivity perspective, you can digest more easily.
I absolutely love that, and I feel like a lot of the women I talk to that have been using AI for a couple of years now, like since ChatGPT first started, I feel like that was one of the first things we collectively started doing. At both of your examples, right? Like putting our brains out into this AI and getting it to phrase things in a way that you know are going to make sense to somebody who's not in your brain.
Exactly. And it's interesting too, because I think I see more female entrepreneurs using AI tools in that way, especially the generative ones that actually is what they're used for. Because I get frustrated when people are like, I'll just look it up on ChatGPT. And I'm like,
That's not what it's
actually,
for.
no. We're looking at patterns. You can ask it to go research, but we still have a use for Google and research journals and peer reviewed things. But when we're trying to actually process something and phrase it differently and work with it, this is the power of these tools, right? So I've seen some really interesting. It's cool to note that because that's what we struggle with as neurodivergent entrepreneurs and women and people who are trauma adapted, that's immediately what we went for. We weren't like, this will replace Google. We were like, oh, please help me figure out how I cannot make this worse.
Yes.
Great. It's so helpful. And I think the prompt is important too, where you just ask for realistic feedback and stuff. I think that's why it's so important, even if you're not a prompt engineer, to understand like what you teach about the context, about giving it parameters of objective feedback and things like that. I think that's it's super important to get the outcomes that you're looking for.
Yeah, I'm starting with that basic framework. I call mine the crown method, but starting with that basic framework of the prompt, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
really leaning more into lately process over prompt,
Hmm.
where yes, you want to start it off with enough information so that it understands, but then really putting the chat back into chat GPT, where I'm having a conversation with this generative AI that now, with the memories, with my custom instructions, and
Mm-hmm.
with all of the conversations that it's already had with me and knows about me, it's gotten so much more powerful at knowing like how to work with me. Maybe that's just perception, but I mean,
I don't think so.
it's getting better.
I think so. And it really depends too on the time of day, the capacity of what's going on.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's something that we also have to be aware of is that we have to still evaluate the outcome and see if it seems realistic to us. We are still the expert in our
Oh yeah.
own with ourselves in our own field in our own mind in our own lives. You can look at it and ChatGPT might say that's going to take you 4 hours and you're like, no, it's not. It's good, maybe an hour, but you have to look at it and give it some discernment. And I think people that's maybe another thing that's worth debunking too is that it is not an oracle that knows all and sees all. It's a tool, and you still have to practice discernment as well. And I think we can lean into something that's very easy when we're overwhelmed and just trust that it will be accurate, but that's not always the case. So it's that idea of like still taking a breather to say, is this providing me with what I need, and from an accurate perspective?
Yeah. And that's our responsibility as users of the tool. We have
Mm-hmm.
to, as you said, exercise
Always.
discernment.
Always discernment. Exactly. And it's an ethical way to use the tool as well, is with that discernment. I think that's what I love about Claude and Anthropic as well, is this idea of like what does ethical use look like, and how can we make sure that we are employing those strategies when we use generative AI, especially when we're using it to support our mental health and our process.
Right.
We have to be mindful.
Yeah. When you think about neurodivergent entrepreneurs, what becomes possible for us when we stop
Mm.
fighting our brains and start designing these systems in our businesses around how we actually think and work?
It's well, I mean, the very fact that we can actually say, yes, this is actually difficult for me. I need a better way to do it is so freeing. The level of self compassion that you can develop by witnessing something that's difficult, asking a generative tool to help you create a process that makes this simpler, implementing said process and realizing it does make it simpler because, yes, I have a difference or yes, I have a disability is unparalleled. To say, oh my gosh, it's like a prosthetic leg for somebody with ADHD in a lot of ways, because a lot of the tasks we struggle with are process oriented. And so it becomes simple to find tools to be able to do that. I think what becomes possible for us is that we can become more metacognitive and self aware, which that alone, that's kind of what medication did for me too, I think a little bit. That alone of saying, oh, when I do it this way, I feel like a squirrel on meth. But when I do it this way, I I mean,
Yeah.
truthfully, they do microdose you on meth if you have ADHD, right? But when I do it this way, I feel like I understand what's happening from start to finish. So it allows you to have a perspective because you have another tool to sort of bounce it off of. That's really helpful. And it allows us as well to outsource a lot of the busyness in our minds so that we can be more effective. I think that I have seen my productivity absolutely climb. It's been crazy. I've seen I don't particularly struggle with expression, but I have seen individuals who self edit significantly no longer do so in writing or whatever. It's wild to say, this is what I want to say. Can you walk me through this? So I think with those two things where we can really have self-compassion and get support on processes by being very clear and frank with them, more so than we'd even be with a therapist because there's no judgment, right? And then removing some of the self-editing that happens when we try to create something or whatever, right there we're going to open up more opportunities for individuals, right? So what I see, especially with female entrepreneurs who have ADHD, is that we are our own worst enemy. We really are. Having feedback, being able to manage our calendar, being able to brain dump, as we talked about, and then organize all of that. They seem simple, but when we have a partner in capacity, it allows us to focus less on that and what we're forgetting and all of that, and be able to self-regulate, be more creative. It creates the capacity that we really need because we're all operating with that neurotype on a minor level of burnout, right? Most women are. So if we have that all the time, where we're sort of this undercurrent of crispiness, when we build more capacity, we have the opportunity to heal the crisp. And like then that, if you think about the hierarchy of needs, when you start to feel safe, when you start to feel regulated, you have more access to your higher level thinking skills, to your creativity and stuff. So it all sort of feeds each other, where we can be more creative, we have more capacity because we have this partner that can help us outsource things that are difficult for us, even if it just gives us a list. And then we have more compassion and the ability to articulate ourselves more clearly. So it really levels out quite a few things that I think are not as difficult for that 1950s stereotypical male productivity breadwinner that most systems are designed for. So we have this way to do that, which I think is remarkable.
I love that. So, if there's some queens out there who are listening and thinking, oh my gosh, this is me. I have been forcing myself into these boxes and these systems that don't fit me. What is their first step with AI? How should they get started today?
It's tough to do a one size fits all question, but I would say I want you to look at your capacity, my friend. So I want you to just dump into AI, a generative tool, what you do in a typical week in your business. Just walk through it. Here are all the things. Ask it, if you don't already do time blocks, this is the game changer. Ask it to block it into categories: maker and manager tasks, creative tasks, working in your business, on your business. Ask it to organize it in such a way that if you wanted to have 6-hour days blocked in a way that made sense, where you could meet your goals by the end of the week, what would that look like? Just see. What I want you to think about most is, for entrepreneurs with ADHD, especially women, is we are operating at peak capacity, sometimes when we don't have to. If you can give yourself very clean silos to begin to organize the things that you do, it will allow you then, when you set goals, to see what you actually can take on, all of those kinds of things. So I would look at ways to build your own capacity. And if you're not sure, you can even use the tool to say, I have ADHD. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm burned out. I need to figure out ways to build more capacity. I'd like to time block. I'd like whatever. It'll give you ideas and you can latch onto the one that you think is best. So for me, that's where I would begin is, let's look at how you're spending your time, because we do tend to row in circles. Let's build some capacity by gathering back some spoons, by putting our time into some silos. And if you already time block, the other thing I'd say is figure out what you're avoiding and ask it to break it into teeny, teeny tasks and see if that helps, if you can walk through a list that way, because that's very helpful for most people that have ADHD. And you'll be shocked as hell how your capacity increases with just those little changes. It's crazy.
I love those. Those are both really good, like, first steps for depending on where you're at. Love those recommendations. Sandy, where can my AI queens find you and learn more about you?
Fabulous. Well, you can go to my website, which is sandybean.com. You can send me an email at hello@sandybean.com if you want to have a conversation. You can find me on LinkedIn, Sandra Bean MEd, or you can find me on Instagram, and I'm think_bean, like jelly bean. And I would love to chat with you about any of this. It is my favorite thing to talk about, and I'm very excited to connect with you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so, so much, Sandy. Thank you for your time, for your brilliance, for sharing all of this with us. Queens, if you heard yourself in this conversation, know that your brain isn't broken and you don't need to fix yourself to build an empire. You need tools that work with you, not against you.
And they're out there, my friends. Play with it and tell us what you discover, because
Yes.
we want to hear it. We want to hear what you have made that you're like, oh, this made such a big difference for me, because your brain is an innovative brain. Stop trying to squish yourself into a box that you never want to be part of to begin with.
Oh, I love that. So everyone, if you are ready to explore how AI can support your beautiful, chaotic, and brilliant brain, go find Sandy online. And if you want more strategies for building a business that's fit for royalty, exactly as you are, you know where to find me in the AI Queen Society, on Instagram now at Erica the AI Queen. That's Erica with a K, the AI Queen, and online at aiqueens.com. Until next time, stay spicy and keep reigning with AI. Thanks for listening to the AI Queens podcast. If you loved today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a fellow queen who needs to hear this. Want more tools and tips? Join the AI Queens Society over at aiqueens.com and start ruling your business with confidence today. Until next time, stay bold, stay curious, and keep reigning with AI.